Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we're going to be going out of this atmosphere, far, far away to an unfriendly planet that has no life, but does have vast resources. We're going to be putting our harvesters right on this planet. We're going to be moving around to specific spots and creating different projects depending on what's around us. And once we do that, we'll be able to then get special abilities that we can use throughout the game. Today, we're taking a look at Pandorum. This is for 2 to 4 players, takes about 60 minutes to play, and it's on Kickstarter right now. So I'm going to give you an overview of how the game's played, and then I'll see you on the other side. The object of the game is to have the most galactic currency at the end of the game, and I'm just going to be calling these points for the rest of the game, but they are galactic currency. And the main way to gain points is you'll be moving your harvester throughout this modular game board, and by playing cards from your hand, you'll be able to build either modules in spots that are adjacent, this means a wild, or if you have 2 cards that are different that also allow you to place, you can place a big base station. And depending on the cards, you'll get points depending on what those cards say. At the beginning of the game, each player will start with a harvester that you see in the back there that they'll be moving around the board. They'll also get a certain amount of large bases that you see just in front of those, depending on the amount of players. And they'll also get a certain amount of modules that they'll also be able to place on the board. And they'll get a certain amount of these depending on the amount of players. Each player will receive a harvester mat, and these are different depending on the amount of players, and there's different ones for each of the players where many of the special abilities you'll be able to activate throughout the game will change. There's also some cargo bays that everyone has that will be endgame points depending on how many cards you collect. We'll go over that later. Now all players will start their harvesters in the middle of this modular board, which as you can see comes apart, and you can put them in different configurations to give the game replayability. Now each player is going to start with a few of these starter cards. They'll also get an additional card from the deck, and you'll be using these cards throughout the game to play them in order to construct different modules and bases. There's also 4 cards placed from a deck that people will be able to gather throughout their hand. See, throughout the game, turns will go in clockwise order. On your turn, you'll either be adding cards to your hand, or you'll be moving your harvester in straight lines and constructing module or bases with the cards from your hands. Now on your turn, since you're either adding cards or moving your harvester and constructing, let's go over these actions in more detail. When adding cards, you'll take 2 cards. You can add them from the face up or the face down. So if you take a card and add it to your hand, if there's less than 4 cards in the display, you automatically refill it up to 4. Now, when you take a card, you can take one off top as well, and if when a new card comes up, if it's the same exact card as another one, it's stacked and considered 1 card, which means we need to fill this up so that there's a total of 4 there, and then we can take a second card, maybe we take one from the top. That would be our turn, it would go to the next player, and that's how you add cards to your hand. Now instead of adding cards to your hand, you can move your harvester, and most of the time you'll be constructing when you do this. And when you move, you must move in a direct straight line. So if it's Red's turn, they can move as far as they want to or can in a straight line. However, you can never move through any of these red hexes. So let's say we move right here. If it's an empty hex, we must be able to construct there. If we can't, then we cannot move there. But in this case, we can. How you construct it is by playing one of the cards from your hand. Now when we play the card from our hand, let's look at this. It has a title, Metal Mining, tells us how many cards there are on the deck. This will tell us where we can place this. If it's multiple colors like this, it's wild. It literally can be placed on pretty much any of them. And this is an effect. So get 1 point for each adjacent green one. So we are right here and we played this card. If we played this single card and we can basically place it based upon that, then we place one of our little modules there. So we can place this where our harvester is, and we're going to get 1 point for each adjacent green hex. And look at this, we have 3 of them, so we would have gotten 3 of that galactic currency here. However, instead of playing 1 card to build a module, you can play 2 cards to build a base. And when we do this, we look at this second card here, and again, it's okay because it can be on any wild, and this says get 1 for each adjacent red. So because we've played 2 cards, and the placement rules we're following okay, we can now place one of the larger bases. So when we place this, we also get the points now from both of these. 1 point for each of the greens, that's 3, and 1 point for each of the adjacent reds, that's 2 more. So we would have gotten 5 galactic currency there. Now after you've constructed, if you did one card, you would place this in one of these 3 slots. We're going to go over what these abilities do later. If you had constructed a base using 2 cards, by the way, when you do a base, they have to be different cards, meaning different name and picture. You can put these in the same slot or different slots, and these give you special abilities throughout the game. This one gives you endgame bonuses. We'll go over these later in the video. Now when moving, if you get to the center cross, nothing can be built there, and so nothing happens. If you end up on a spot that has a project from another player, and that's where you're ending your turn, you must pay them 1 currency if it's the small module, or 2 of the galactic currency if it's a larger base. Now opponents' projects don't stop you, you can actually move through them, but if you land on them, that's when you pay them. And you might do this because you might want to come around here and come up here to start getting in these hexes, because remember, you can't move through or cross or beyond those red hexes. Now you can land on an opponent's project and not pay them if you don't have any galactic currency. That usually happens towards the beginning of the game. Now let's talk about when we add those cards to the harvester. There's 3 sides. We have the 4 part, and these are always going to be different abilities depending on the player and which board they get, but they act sort of similar in the ways that you'll use a certain amount of cards depending on the players once you put them. And remember, they get here after you've built successful projects with them. And when you do get to activate this, in the 4 part, once it's activated, the cards go out of the game, and this can be activated again throughout the game. Where this one activates with 5 cards, but they stay here, and this is an ongoing ability, and then these ones stay for the entire game, and these will give you end game bonuses. Now the jump drive allows you to move your harvester to any of the hexes that aren't red throughout the board. The solar panel allows you to add an additional card. Instead of adding 2 cards on an added card turn, you get to add a 3rd card. So you're getting more cards throughout the game. Again, that's a permanent ability once you've gotten your 5 cards here. And at the end of the game, we go through each of these colors left to right, and we see who has the most of them. If they're tied, nobody gets the bonus, but if someone has more than everyone else, they get 1 point for each of the cards of that color. So these are the white ones. Let's say I had the most, I'd get 2 points because I have 2 of them, and you do that for all the rest of these. You'd add those points to all the currency you already got, and whoever has the most points is the winner. Now let's move on to some of the other cards that are in the game to give you a feel for some of those. Now if you're curious, you can pause the video now and read through some of the other abilities that the different harvester boards have. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to showing you some of the other different cards in the game. Now up to this point, all the cards we've used to construct could have been played on any hex. But like this case, the energy generator, you would have to have played this to construct on a yellow hex. And these green generator cards bring you points for each of your adjacent projects. The logistic cards get you points for your projects that are located on hexes indicated on the card, so in this case, yellow ones. The labs get you different points depending on having projects next to that starting launching pad. Or some labs give you points for having adjacent specific types of projects. Purple cards are protection cards. In this case, you'll get points for each of your projects placed next to a red hex or a group of red hexes. Or like in the network security, you can get points based upon a straight line build out of your projects. Now the blocks, the white cards, like this force field generator unit, can be used in 1 of 2 ways. You can either get points straight up, or if you play it with another card, in this case the purple protection card, you get twice as many points. Now the red systems type cards are the only ones that don't get you points just on their own, but they allow you to take points from other players for building adjacent to them. Well, I hope that helped you learn more about Pandorum and understand how the game is played, because it is on Kickstarter right now. There's a link below me that will bring you directly to that Kickstarter's project where you can see the final art, the final components, more information about how you could get involved, how you might be able to back this game. And as you can see, it's sort of that Euro style game, 60 minutes or less, where you're trying to decide, should I pick up certain cards or should I play them to then move my harvester and then create projects? Well, which project should I make? Some of them you can, play those 2 cards, but some of them have to have certain cards played with them. But as you play cards, those become available for other players. So what do you want to give up versus what do you want to score? Then you have these different special abilities, some that are immediate, some that are ongoing, and some that will give you some end game bonus points. So lots of things to think about in both the short term and the long term if this looks like something that you'd like to back. Again, I placed the link below me in the description of this video. So if you do that, I'm sure the people at Cosmodrome Games would love your support.